Welcome to this episode of Qatsyr Harvest. I am your host, Craig Wynn. It is Rich who just disappeared on the screen to the right, and of course, this handsome fellow here is Wookie. I actually have a serious note that I'd like to begin this program by sharing with you. Today, in a number of social media channels, but particularly on X, Israel, at least a journalistic arm representing Israel, released for the first time a narrative of the sexual abuses that were perpetrated by Muslim jihadists on October 7th of 2023 under the campaign of Al-Aqsa flood. Of course, there wasn't the mention of Islam. There was no mention of screams of Allahu Akbar. There was no mention of the fact that the perpetrators were Muslims. But they did provide a detailed accounting of how gruesome the attack was and how perverted and sadistic it was sexually, not only of women, but also of men. And we're not talking just rape, which is horrible. We're not even talking just gang rape, which is even more horrible. We're talking about mutilation of both men and women, boys and girls. We're talking about people being tied up to trees after being stripped and dehumanized. And then after being gang raped, being tortured. And then after being tortured, then finally killed. And then after being killed, raped some more. And it happened to both women and men. My issue here isn't so much that Muslims did these horrible atrocities. And for this one moment, it isn't even that those reporting on them, even after all of this time, can't say that these were perpetrated by Muslims following Muhammad's example and motivated by Allah in the Quran. My issue here is that this is taking place 21 months late. And that even now, Israel has only provided a written description and not crime scene photographs. At stake is the very survival of Israel. This is not a small issue. On the morning of 10/7/23, 21 months ago, one of the very first things that I wrote to Israel, and then later that week said to Israel as part of the Yahweh blog, was that Israel had to do something that was very uncomfortable for the nation and for the people. But if they did not do this, they would not survive. And that is to make the lives of those who were so brutally dehumanized, abused, tortured, mutilated, even abducted and murdered as part of the Islamic plot to exterminate Jews of Al-Aqsa flood. That if Israel did not document those crime scenes, showing every gruesome detail, with full narratives by the professionals that were documenting those crime scenes. Camera crews, video crews, medical experts, forensic experts, all testifying as to what they were witnessing, what they were filming, what they were documenting. And if that evidence was not presented forthwith and completely unmasked, raw, that millions of Jews would die, as opposed to a little over 1,000. That's how serious this is. And it was the best way to honor those lives who were so badly abused. Make them count. They could save the nation. One life, saving tens of thousands, protecting them for future abuse. Tell the story exactly as it happened. Talk about the screams of Allahu Akbar. This was not a Hamas raid. These were Muslims praising their God while ravaging Jews, just like Muhammad did 14 centuries earlier. This was Now it says BRB.
BRB.
Did you post that?
No. Unless Kevin did.
Well, it's like the screen is showing that it's picking up my voice. No, that's perhaps not. Yes, it is.
There we go.
The screen is showing that it's picking up my voice, which means that, well, we may not. There
We're
we are.
live now, baby.
We're back.
You're back.
All right. Well, we had a 10-minute interruption there. Don't quite know where the show cut out. We're apologize for the technical glitch. We don't know if it was Starlink, an issue with Starlink, an issue with StreamYard, who we use for live streaming of these programs, if it was part of our local network, or what may have failed. What I was in the midst of talking about, and it's really difficult now, of course, to regroup and return to something this devastating, this horrendous. But what I was sharing was that Israel committed a crime that is almost as devastating for the lives of Jews and the survival of the state of Israel as was the Islamic attack on 10/7. And it's as if Israel deliberately covered over the crime scene. And I'm here to tell you that, and this is what I wrote on 10/7 of 21 months ago. It is what I have reported in my open letter to Israel. It is what I have published in Goddamn Religion, Volume 1. That among the single most important aspects of surviving what happened on October 7th was documenting it, was showing every gruesome detail, was having video and also photojournalists there, to have reporters there, to have medical personnel there, to have forensic examiners there, to have every expert that could be brought to bear, and to methodically go from one aspect of this crime scene to another, even if there were 30 crime scenes, one after another. Remove the wounded and treat them, but document every aspect of even what happened to them. Let them tell their story. But for the slain, for the mutilated, for the abused, who succumbed to the horrors of Islam on that day, their story has to be told. Yes, it would be gruesome. Yes, it would be hard on surviving family members. Yes, it would rip apart the heart. Yes, these pictures would be explicit, and you would have to offer approval even to the X's and the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world to air this evidence. But it had to be done. And by not doing it, and it still hasn't been done, and I don't even think it can be done at this point, all we have now is testimony of the survivors and of the first responders. And some of their cell phone pictures, even though they didn't share them, they're looking at them as they're describing what they're seeing and what they remember. It's not enough. It was critical that Israel prove that it was Muslims who did this and that Hamas is just part of the problem, that the overwhelming percentage of those who invaded Israel under Alaska flood were just ordinary Muslims from Gaza. And it was imperative that Israel make the connection between the behavior of Muhammad and his assault on the Jews of Yathrib and his assault on the Jews of Kabar, because it was every bit as savage. There were rapes, there were abductions, there was enslavement of children, torture, mutilations, beheadings, mass murder, all of it was just the same. And to share the hadith from the first Muslims who did this to the Jews of Arabia long ago, perpetrating genocide against them. The case had to be made if you're going to survive. And what I said is, in addition to documenting, videographing, photographing, and having forensic experts, medical experts, describe every aspect of that carnage and to what occurred before the bodies are moved, before anything else happens. Once those victims are identified, and they can be anonymous because it's to the degree that they're unnamed victims there. That's one thing, to show what happened to these individuals, but there ought to have been a celebration of life. Not the belated, cryptic, here's a picture of so-and-so who died on this day, and, they wanted to be a soccer player, they were a chef, they had dreams of world travel. No, create beautiful montages of their life, hundreds of pictures, and if there were videos, and testimony from their friends, and the laughs, the smiles that were extinguished. The war of public opinion based upon Alaska flood, this Islamic attack that was premeditated against Israel, was far more important than the war of retaliation that subsequently has followed in Gaza. And I have made it clear even on that date, 21 months ago, that if Israel lost the war of public opinion because it did not document these atrocities and did not create these visuals and they provide this evidence, and to show that men, just Muslims, screaming Allahu Akbar, perpetrated the most heinous crimes ever documented, to reveal just how savage Islam makes men. That it wouldn't matter what Israel achieved in Gaza. It just wouldn't matter. Because if you lose the war of public opinion, which Israel has, then what occurs as a result is now the victims are being presented all around the world as the victimizers. And quite frankly, you made a bad situation worse in Gaza. And you did so because you incorrectly identified your foe, and then you established impossible war objectives. When you establish a war objective that cannot possibly be met, then there is no way to prevail. You will eventually lose. And that's what's going to happen to Israel in Gaza. And this was something else that I forewarned Israel about on the morning of October 7th of 2023. So I'm not speaking in retrospect, but instead someone who knew what Israel was going to do and what the consequence would be. You cannot prevail against a religious foe with bullets and bombs. With every one you exterminate, you make several more. Yes, you can kill every Hamas leader, and they will find more. You could completely eradicate Hamas, and there would be 5 more Islamic jihadists for everyone you killed. That is the math of religious terrorism. They want you to kill them. You see, Israel, you were played for fools. After being victimized, they knew that if they made that attack that savage, yeah, no big deal. That was Quranic, following Muhammad's orders. Muhammad was a rapist. Muhammad was a sadistic torturer. Muhammad was a pedophile. Muhammad was a mass murderer. Muhammad was a terrorist. So since all of these things are known to Muslims to be true and sanctioned by Allah, it was no big deal to get Muslims to act this heinously, and they did. But the whole plan was for Israel to retaliate the way it did, to bomb Gaza into oblivion, to kill 50 to 100,000 Muslim men, women, and children. That is what they wanted you to do. And you did it. And you celebrated it. And you pretended like it was a victory. It wasn't a victory. Were you justified in bombing hospitals and schools and homes and turning Gaza into a demolition site based upon what the Gazan Muslims did and the fact that there is no difference between a Gazan Muslim and Hamas? Absolutely. You're justified. Was it the right thing to do? Hell no. Wrong. And I said so on the morning of 10/7 of 23. And the reason that is the case is because you can't prevail in a war if you attack a symptom. You cannot prevail when your enemy is religious with bullets and bombs. You need to know who they are and why they did this. And you need to understand that you can't play into their hands. And you did. You killed so many of them, and you destroyed so much of Gaza that now Israel is the pariah of the world. The whole world is against you. You went too far. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. I know that in Israel, I'm going to catch all sorts of flack for this today by telling you the truth after these reports came out 21 months late and they're still insufficient, rather than being applauded for, thank you, we needed to hear that. No, I had followers run off screaming their hair on fire. It's the nature of social media. Don't tell me the truth. I want to have my ears tickled. Don't you dare confront me with reality that I don't want to hear. Don't tell me that my illusions are wrong. They wanted you to go into Gaza and to bomb it and to kill 100,000 Muslim men, women, and children. That was the intent, because they knew that if you did that and they documented the pictures of their suffering, they would turn the world against you, and therefore the victims became the victimizers in world opinion. And you never documented your victimization. Made it easy for them. And here you are. And There are armed gunsmen all over Gaza. You have 2 million people and you don't know what to do with them. Still talking about moving them, which would be the worst thing you could possibly do, because then you can't keep them away from amassing weapons. There's no place for them to live there anymore. You destroyed them. There's no international functioning food distribution system there, and you can't starve 2 million people to death. You already made a mess of things. You lost. I know you don't want to deal with that, but that's what happened. You lost. By destroying Gaza, you played into their hands by killing 100,000 Gazans, whether it's 50,000 or 100,000 or somewhere in between. The fact of the matter is, I don't care how careful you were in trying to protect civilians, because there really aren't any innocent civilians. Gaza is all Islamic, and Oscar Flood was an all Islamic act. There's no separating the Gazans and the Islamic jihadists. They're all one and the same. And I know you tried to pretend that there was a way to distinguish them, and you gave notice every time that you bombed something. But the fact of the matter is, you still bombed it. Women and children died. And you forever soiled your reputation around the world. You turned the world against you. And today you can't live in isolation with the world. And you have half the Jewish population living in a world that is hunting Jews like it's open season. And you have the rest of the world wanting to sanction Israel, wanting to reward the Muslims who perpetrated this horrible act with a state of their own, carved right out of the heart of Israel. Yes, when it comes to Israel's survival, the biggest crime that day was covering over the crime scene and not documenting it. And now that we hear what the reports are of how savage the Muslims were on this day, and you don't have the evidence to document it, to prove it, to validate it, and that you come out with it 21 months late, shame on you. You needed to honor their suffering by making each of those lives matter to the extent that they protected tens of thousands of future victims. And then, of course, you celebrate the release of your hostages as if trading with the devil and playing into their hands again. They took the hostages knowing that you would trade many for few, that you would even trade living terrorists for dead bodies, that you would make your war staccato, on and off, manipulated with the release of a hostage, as opposed to recognizing that every hostage you get back will cost you thousands upon thousands upon thousands more in the future. Because this is what's going to happen, Israel. You are going to withdraw. The world will force you to withdraw. And when you withdraw, the Muslims in Gaza, particularly the armed ones and those still clinging to Hamas, are going to celebrate their great victory. They're going to use it to inspire Muslims the world over to rise up and obliterate Israel. And they will. And there's going to be an Alaska flood 2.0 that will occur within 2 years, and it'll be 1,000 times worse than the one that you tried to avenge the wrong way. And still you won't listen. I don't know if it's just, I can't say this. I have noticed that people like to ascribe blame to a single individual. In this case, when it's Israel, the person who has been belligerent and perpetrating the war the wrong way is Netanyahu, the person who made the decision to make a bad situation worse in Iran. this Netanyahu. And I'm uncomfortable simply blaming him because he's only in power because he's the most popular of all Israelis. And right now he is celebrated, maybe more popular than ever, even though he took Israel to the very precipice of annihilation in the Iranian war. And any rational assessment of what happened there says that Israel came within a blink of being destroyed and that you accomplished nothing. Now, the Chinese and the Russian support of Iran is galvanized. They still have the 60 to 90% uranium-235, 450 kilograms. It's enough to make up to 30 bombs with the standard mix of uranium and tritium, which they also have. They were told in advance what was going to be bombed. They moved it out of the facilities that were unprotected, and they moved it all to the facility that was not touched underground, which is where the uranium gas is metallized for bombs. And you can say, well, we killed the scientists, so they can't do it anymore. Well, you didn't kill enough of them. And now China and Russia are going to protect their ally. They rallied around their ally at the BRICS meetings in Brazil, still doing so. And they have the perfect foil in fat, bad hair boy in Jong-il in North Korea. You can send them whatever they need to finish their arsenal of bombs, and they certainly have the missiles to deliver them already. So you didn't prevail in that regard, and there's now a 0% chance that Iran is going to accept inspectors because you infiltrated the inspectors. So they'll never accept inspectors again, and there will be nothing that will stop them or slow them in the development of a nuclear bomb, because they know that the only reason that they were susceptible was because they hadn't completed their bomb. I'm sorry, but you made a bad situation worse, and you turned China, whom you need, and Russia, which was once an ally, against you. And you think that America is your great friend and you're celebrating it. Oh, yeah, even Netanyahu to brown-nosed Trump even also recommended him for the Nobel Peace Prize. For what? For bombing Iran? What are you going to, would you recommend him for the Peace Prize for? For protecting Israel's butt by didn't end it, by having a temporary truce and then dropping an F-bomb on you? What is it? Because there isn't anybody that thinks that war is over. That everybody is just restocking. You think it would be possible to have a less reliable friend than Donald Trump, who changes his stance on everything every other day and is the foremost personality terrorist the world has ever known? Even his closest allies, he destroys. He's the Hannibal Lecter of politicians. And that's your ally? You're going to go to bank with that? Israel, you're in an exceedingly precarious position and you're doing everything wrong. And I know that that every time I say this, that since Netanyahu is popular, that we're back to the same situation where it's almost impossible to get Jews to open their minds and think rationally. It's just the same thing. You try to talk to a MAGA-ite about Trump's duplicity and the fact that he has been bribed $16.5 billion that we know of by Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, all of which would be delighted with the destruction of Israel. And you just can't break through. And the same thing appears to be the case with Israel. You just can't break through and get your attention. And it's the same issue that Yahweh and Moshe faced 3,500 years ago, when even 3 days out of Joreb, you became so obnoxious that God and Moshe gave up on you. Said, we can't deal with you, can't lead you, can't work with you, can't teach you, can't protect you, can't guide you, can't do anything with you. We're just going to go through the paces from this point on because you're impossible. And you haven't changed. You told God to shut up and go away. You want to deal with that? Because you still won't say his name. It won't change. You're as religious as ever. God hates religion. So what now, Israel? You want to pretend that you've got Hashem on your side. You want to pretend that prayer is going to make a difference. He's already told you. He's sitting this one out. He's already told you of what hell you're going to bring on yourselves. He's told you that you're 11 months away from the time of Israel's troubles. And it's going to be worse than any time in Israel's history, including the Holocaust. He's actually told you exactly what Alaska Flood 2.0 is going to be like in graphic detail. And he's told you how you can avoid the carnage, how you can be protected from it. But you're not listening to that either. So, I'll repeat. I gave you a 5-point plan as to how you should respond to Alaska flood on October 7th of 2023. You didn't implement a single part of that plan, and it's all come back to bite you. And the moment you pull out of Gaza, it's going to be far worse than if you had ever been there. Because the world is going to condemn you for the destruction of Gaza and for the death of the Gazan Muslims there. And they're going to continue to shout, "Death to the IDF." And they're going to continue to say, "Palestine will be free." And even there, Israel, you're clueless. Israelis will post things claiming that there are Palestinians more often than the Muslims do. I mean, you got to know that Palestine is an ethnic slur, genocidal, that it was perpetrated by Hadrian while he was torturing Jews to death. At the very formation of Judaism, mind you, it was at the very moment that Rabbi Akiba, the father of Judaism, had failed in his promotion of a false Messiah. And the consequence was Hadrian renaming the land Philistia just to aggravate the Jews he was torturing to death. And yet, when this term was resurrected by the KGB and by the Muslim Brotherhood on behalf of the PLO, you used it. You made it part of your vocabulary. When the British, who are anti-Semitic, used it instead of Israel to describe the land, you went along with the ploy. You even called yourselves Palestinians. Good for you. Look what the hell you've wrought upon yourself. You've created and aided, abetted the illusion that there is a land called Palestine and a people known as Palestinians who the world now thinks that you have occupied their land. All because you didn't confront the lie. And you've encouraged Muslims to live among you. And you're so proud of yourself for having done that. And yet, they're indoctrinated from youth to kill you. It's like saying, I'm so proud that I have a house that is filled with vipers, because I want to show that we ought to love vipers. They're an animal too, and they have a right to exist. And I want to have not only vipers in my home, I want to make certain that we find some rats that have fleas around them that are carrying the bubonic plague, because, you know, viruses, they have a right to exist too. We want to show that we're tolerant. I'm sad for you, Israel. And my job is to awaken you. My job is to protect you. My job is to speak to you. It's been 2,500 years since Yahweh had somebody speak for him to you. And now, come to find out, his approach to you is the same as his approach to you has always been. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to sugarcoat it, nor did God. We had the good judgment to tell you the truth and the whole truth, knowing that you wouldn't like it. But hopefully there are, as we move through these last 99 months, there will be a number of you who will listen and who will prevail and who will survive and will thank us in the end for what we have done, for the benefit of the nation that has been so antagonistic towards God and their own well-being for so long. I wrote, as I was posting a short this morning, that there may have been a reason that Yahweh had me start by investigating Islam, by spending years of my life in the Islamic hell of the Quran and Hadith, chronicling what can be known about Allah and Muhammad. Sadistic devils, both of them. It is the most gruesome, immoral, disgusting episode in human existence, the rise of Islam. And I have come to the conclusion that Yahweh figured that if I were resilient enough, tough enough, to endure that trip into hell to protect Israel from Islam, that I would have the fortitude to face the most formidable of all of Israel's enemies, Israelis. You see, this was a foe God himself could not overcome, nor could Moshe. Read Numbers 11. God himself gave up on you. Well, you gave up on him. And so now, with your backs up against the wall, with 99 months to go, God says, I'm going to find somebody tough enough to go into the swamp of Islam, into hell, to protect my people. He'll have what it takes to battle their most formidable foe, themselves. And that's what I'm doing now. All right. I'm not sure I got that off my chest, but I'm glad that we've had this opportunity, and I hope that we find a way to resolve that long gap in the middle. As we return to the series called Qatsyr Harvest, we are reviewing the prophet who spoke most vociferously of the last days, of what God would do, what Jews would do, what I will do, collectively, collaboratively, on behalf of Israel. And the next statement reads, "Fear not, and do not be awed. He's speaking this to the land. Fear not and do not be awed, earth and land. It's Adamah. Now, we don't know for certain that there wasn't a ulterior designation of Adamah in this case. But you see, Adamah means more than earth. It means more than ground. It means more than land. Adamah means a bloody red man of the earth. Adamah speaks of a feminine projection of humankind, which is why the last sacrificial offering that is brought to bear for the benefit of the remnant of Israel, the remnant that survives in the end, is called the Adamah Parah. He is the bloody red man of the earth who is productive. He is known as the red heifer. He's not a girly cow. That same voice that Yahweh picked to speak to you happens to be the Adamah Parah. And so it says, do not fear, do not be awed, do not be intimidated, distressed, or concerned, Adamah, you bloody red man of the earth. Why? Because there's a lot to accomplish, and the foes are grievous. Today, Israel, you have Marxists who are against you. These Marxists would be progressives, socialists, liberals. They are almost universally opposed to you. MAGAs have turned against you, and conspiratorialists have long been opposed to you. Lots of MAGAs are conspiratorialists, so the MAGA conspiratorialists of the world. And by the way, there are a lot of MAGAs outside of the United States who just buy into the bestial nature, the vicious nature of the cult of personality around Donald Trump. I deal with them all the time from all around the world. And you also have, of course, a couple of billion Muslims that are opposed to you. So between the right-wing conspiratorial nutcases, the Marxist, socialist, liberals, and the Muslims, it's about 6 billion people that are opposed to you and therefore opposed to me. And my job is to protect you from them so that there is a remnant of you at the proper time on the day of the Herald on Teruah in 2033, and also to cultivate as many as possible to participate in the Shavua Qatsyr harvest that we're talking about here. And it was clear from Yeshaya that it is the Parah, this productive and fruitful individual. It's a bull that is productive and fruitful. Therefore, it has the ending, because, you don't normally consider productive and fruitful in the sense of offspring with a bull, but with the heifer. But the fact of the matter is, in this particular case, this bull's a dude. And this guy is, according to God, has offspring. Even Yeshaya says, this man from Edom, he's going to save many, a great many. And so God is saying to him, to the Adamah, this bloody red man of the earth, don't be intimidated. Don't be distressed. Don't be concerned. Don't be awed by anything that you see. Have no fear. You have a job to do. Do your job. Even if 90% of Israelites, the wacko, parasitic Haredim on one side, the irrational progressives and political liberals on the other, even if there's not one of them representing 40, 45%, maybe 50% of Israel that will even pay any attention, that will demonize you, don't be intimidated. Don't be distressed by them. Don't be bothered that on X you are in a cesspool of anti-Semitism that is absolutely rigged against those supporting Israel. Don't be bothered by that. Don't be bothered by the fact that this message will never be popular. Don't be bothered by the fact that people want to wallow and grovel at Trump's feet and you know that he's the great betrayer. Don't be awed. Don't be intimidated. So with Yashaya speaking of the Parah in conjunction with the day of the Herald and this final sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, we have Yoel speaking of the Adamah, half of the Adamah Parah. Do not be awed. Do not be intimidated, Adamah, bloody red man of the earth. Be glad and show a positive attitude. Yeah, it's true. I wrote the other day that after my good friend Kirk drew an illustration of me, and I'll post it again on Facebook and on X just because it expresses so much. And you can notice I'm not speaking at the moment. You can look into my eyes and you know that I'm contemplative, that I'm about to say something, but that in that expression, you know that there is a tremendous confidence and conviction that what I say will matter and that it will prevail. And therefore, there's an optimism, even under the tremendous burden of having the world, even of Jews themselves, being in opposition. I know we're going to prevail. I have every confidence in Yahweh. Yahweh has revealed that we are going to prevail. He's always right. So be joyful and anticipate a vastly more favorable circumstance, Adamah. Show this positive attitude. Reveal that you know that a favorable result will materialize because Yahweh has done and he will continue to do great things which enable growth. God will do whatever needs to be done. And this time, he is all in. He backed away during the Exodus when Israel said, "Shut up and go away." He even backed away at the end of Daud's first life because Israel, with the coup that was led by his son Absalom, was just too embittered. It wore Daud out. It was too long a life of challenges, overwhelmed him after a while. God's not going to let that happen this time. You are not going to prevail against us. Now, God sent in the reinforcements. The Choder has the 7 spirits of Yahweh. That is considerable. And he is not going to stand down. He has, and he will continue to do, Ashah, whatever is required. He is acting in your presence. He is using me as his voice. He is empowering my mind and my conviction, my sense of understanding, such that I'm the first person to ever visualize the entire portrait that God has painted for us and can reveal what God said would happen today that will materialize tomorrow so that you're prepared for it. We will succeed with you or without you because there will be a number of you who are going to benefit and will grow because God is honorable. He wants to elevate your status. He wants to lift you up. Yoel 2:21. Even as Israel fights for its very right to exist, battling the death cult of Islam and the drone of progressive Marxist rhetoric, as well as the MAGAs who have turned. Calling for the nation's demise, there is reason to celebrate. Not only will the Shabua Qatsyr remove the covenant family from the time of Jacob's troubles, Yom Kippurim will be the most awe-inspiring day on earth. And the 10 days before, both with the Lakat, the gleaning of Teruah, as there's a stream of light of Yehudim and Yisraelites that are withdrawn from the earth as immortal beings. And then we have Elia orchestrate the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, the red heifer, the bloody red man of the earth who saves many. And God ignites those flames. He releases the waters that will dance off the Temple Mount and the flames that soar to the heavens as he extinguishes and incinerates all who came to torment Israel. And as he turns the earth back into the conditions found in Eden, all during that 10-day period, as he retrieves through his spiritual chariot all of the Yehudim who can benefit from the sacrifice of the red heifer, all at this moment, all for the return and the homecoming and the family reunion and the ultimate betrothal of the now cleansed adulterous woman that was Israel to your returning king, David. It's the most amazing 15 days in human history because it leads to us camping out with God for 1,000 years here on earth, return to the conditions found in Eden. That's where we're headed. And there will be many of you who will be there, and many more who will not. But I rejoice for those who will listen. Yahweh has done amazing things. He has created the universe. He's conceived life. He has nurtured a relationship, initially with Adam and Chawa in the garden. He's protected Noah and his family aboard the ark. He established the covenant with Abraham and Sarah, and not only oversaw this conception of Yisrael, but he emancipated his people from human bondage. And he will do so again. Our time with God is not ending. It is just beginning. And all the while, he will raise us as his children and watch us grow. And it's because he has chosen an implement to convey this to you at a time when it's most important for you to hear it. We do not know how Yahweh will repopulate animals on a restored earth purged of politics and religion. But we know that there will be no need for them to be distressed anymore. The author of life has a better world in store for all bearers of souls, us humans, and our four-footed friends. Do not be distressed or concerned, animals of the open environs, because the beautiful pastures and lovely dwelling places of the barren wastelands are becoming verdant, and they will grow. Surely the tree lifts up and bears its fruit, the fig and the vine. Their vigor and strength will show. I don't know if I was the first on this issue, but certainly among them and the most vocal about it. To recognize that the earth is returning to the conditions experienced in Eden. That the story in Eden was vividly narrated for us so that we would know where God is offering to take us. And that the trip from Eden back to Eden played out in exactly 6,000 years. And that the Mikre of Pesach opens the door. And Sukkah shelters represents this return to camping out with God. And I knew that God was going to expunge all traces of religion and politics, militarism and patriotism from the earth because they did not exist in Eden. And this is what he is going to do here and now. And just as Eden featured animals, and that God cared deeply about them, and that he had one of the most could describe them based upon what he perceived about them, which means he probably had the ability to talk with them and listen to them. That forevermore is going to be populated with life, and there will be animals, and they will not be abused anymore. So God is saying here, there'll be no reason for animals of the open environs to be distressed. And everything now is going to be an open environment because there's no reason to wall off Eden. It was walled off previously because there were humans without an asama that were deadly and destructive and religious and political outside the garden 6,000 years ago. And God didn't want Adam and Chava to be harassed by them. But there'll be no reason for walls because there will be no religious, there'll be no political people left on earth. So there's no reason for distress. There's no reason for walls. The animals will be of the open environs, and the pastures and the dwelling places will be lovely. What was a barren wasteland will become verdant, and it will grow, Dasha. It will sprout. It will be green. It's going to come back to life as all forms of vegetation thrives. There were two trees in the garden. The tree of lives is represented by the lives of David. He had three of them. That's why he's called the branch. And so that tree of lives, represented by the three lives of David when he lived as our Messiah, the Son of God and King, came back then 1,000 years later to fulfill Pesach Matzah Bakurim in 33 CE, and will return as our King and our Shepherd in 2033. He represents the tree of lives. It lifts up, it bears its fruit, but he is not the only tree. There's also the tree of knowledge. Why God named me Yada. And yes, you can say that that tree of knowledge presented both good and bad, right and wrong, productive and counterproductive, and that is God's job and my job. There's as much information in the Torah and prophets on God's disdain for religion and politics and man's deceptive ways as there is on God presenting his intent. And so there is in my presentations like today and in my books. I have become the tree of knowledge of both what is right and what is wrong, good and bad. The fig and the vine will give their vigor and strength. The fig represents the nation of Israel, and when it is growing, it represents Israel thriving again. And the vine, it represents all that Dode planted in that vineyard that produces the wine of inheritance that is symbolic with the blood that was smeared on the doorway to life and into God's home by the fulfillment of Passover. The fig and the vine will show their vigor and strength. And the tree of lives and the tree of knowledge of good and bad will bear and lift up fruit again. You will. Yahweh is God. Joel 2:22. So I thank you for listening. We'll have to figure out what happened with our intermission here, but nevertheless, it's always an honor to be able to speak to you, to care about you, to do my best to reintroduce you back to Yahweh, to reacquaint you with the great gift that was offered to you by having the door to life opened, your guilt carried away and deposited to perfect you and to adopt you into the covenant family that was achieved by Dode on his second of 3 lives, and to make you aware that it is this very same king who is returning in just 99 months from now. So I thank you for being part of the Yahweh blog. And I have been your host, Craig Wynn.